Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another LCS report. I'm Rob. He's Nick, and we always start off with our favorite question. Nick, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm just glad we got to see some playoff League of Legends, some series play. And I'm really excited to get into it. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I am wearing my TL jersey in honor of the fact that I was clearly very disrespectful to them based on their week that they had. But that's okay. I'm not gonna completely apologize for it. I'm just gonna say sometimes your predictions are wrong. So it was an interesting weekend. I think more so in the fact that realistically, at least for me, only one series went completely the way that I expected. I know that for the most part, and we can show our picks here now. We both got Fly TL right, just not the games. We both picked them for 3-1. We got C900 Thieves correct, but we both thought that one was going to be a much closer series, which we'll kind of dive into here. You did get TL Dig correct. I did not. I thought, Dig was going to put up more of a fight than they did. They looked. We'll go into that. And then 100 Thieves and NRG, we got completely correct. So, Nick, you are right. During regular season, it was a bit of a struggle, but you went perfect. Nearly about as perfect as you could have gone in playoffs. You missed technically 3 games.
Yeah, I think I gave Dig an extra win,
You
if
gave
I recall
Dig a win.
correctly.
You
I
missed
thought they were
one
going to
on
take a win.
TL, and then you missed the
hmm
2 on TL. So I guess technically 4. I was completely off. So, on the Dig TL game, which, like I said, we'll get into
Whoa,
here.
whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on. I can't take credit for C9 sweeping 100 Thieves. I had that going fives,
No, that's what I said. You
right?
missed 4 games technically
Okay,
overall,
okay,
but
okay, okay. Yeah.
but you
All right.
still went perfect in terms of picking who was going to win. I thought I'd have a little bit of a fun upset there. Um, Ultimately, that means that, especially for me, my bracket technically is bad now, so I'll have to redo that. You'll see that on the next episode when we actually do our predictions. So if you want to, you know, be involved, you can let us know in the comments below what you think we're going to end up predicting. Maybe wait until the end of this episode because you might get a better idea of what that is. But let's start with our goodbyes to NRG and Dignitas. I think we start with Dignitas just to, it's going to sound bad, get it out of the way. They
Sure.
looked horrible. I mean, they looked lost. It was
Mm-hmm.
very odd to me how they, like, every play they made felt like it felt like what I thought they would be at the beginning of the season when I was putting them in the bottom 2. This was not the same team. I think the pressure got to them in a pretty bad way. And it was really disappointing, to be honest with you, because I
Yeah.
definitely thought this team had more fight in it. And it just felt like they forgot how to play. I mean, it was like, um, it almost made me mad that Shopify didn't get in. Like, that's how I was feeling during that series. I was like, I bet money. I know for a fact, and again, this is apparently just a Shopify fan podcast at this point. But like, I really did. I was like watching these games. I'm like, I know that these guys would have played better in this game. At least it would have made it more interesting. It just felt like Dignitas never
Mm-hmm.
had a shot in almost any of the games. It just felt like Team Liquid were in full control, and that was really disappointing for me because I had really hoped that it would be a much closer series, but I don't know, man. I mean, what do you think? I mean, it was bad, at least, is I think what we're both thinking.
Yeah, so I think that there's going to be a natural reaction to being like, well, I mean, of course, Dig lost 3-0. TL played way better than we expected, right? That's definitely a factor. I
Mm-hmm.
think Team Liquid looked pretty solid this weekend, definitely better than I expected. But that doesn't also mean that I think Dig played worse than we expected, right? It's not just that TL showed up. Um, Really, what it felt like to me was that I think we saw that in a series game. It really felt like, I mean, first, I really felt like XU was letting his mistakes from game 1 get to him in
Mm-hmm.
game 2, get to him in game 3, And I think that he's aware that when things go right, he can be an X factor, a wild card. He can be. He's not the best player on Dig, like pound for pound, but he is like the X factor of like if he can surprise somebody, this team suddenly becomes a top 4 team instead of a top 6 team, right?
Yeah.
That was a huge factor in how they won a lot of their early games. And once Dig doesn't always do a good job of getting an early game advantage. Once they have it, they're pretty methodical in the mid game. Like
Yep.
they do really settle in. And this is even what Spawn said in the interview with I can't remember who did the interview, but it was him and Anatron talking to each other about TL Dig, and they're scrim partners. They know each other well, and he felt like he's like Dig has great set play. If we can throw them off early on, though, I think we can win. And that was nice to see too, because I think TL had some more active early games against Dig. I thought UMT looked really good. I've also been of the opinion that UMT has looked worse in the regular season because of Team Liquid synergy issues, and I feel vindicated because I thought that he had a fantastic weekend.
He was awesome.
I thought he played very well. So I think that was a big part of it. But I think also like XU's a young player, and I think like by game 3, I think there was like after the 2-0, I'm like, all right, this is 3-0. Not because it was 2-0, but because of the way the game of each other. Like the way that they lost. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Your mic went a little buggy there for a second, but we're good now.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so just the way that they lost game 2 after the way the game 1 went, I was like, oh, this is a bad sign. And I think that if you asked XG this, I think he would agree. I think that he let it get in his head a little bit, but he's a young player. He clearly has a lot of talent, and he's aware that like it's tough to not be the best player on your team, but know that you need to play above your weight. You need to bat above your average for the team to do better. His role in Dig reminds me, he wants to do what Boogie can do when Shopify has good games, right? Like, and so I think those are the right impulses. I think that we just saw a more disappointing Dig, and we saw what happens when they don't check the boxes early on, they don't settle in to that mid game. It can look pretty ugly. And yeah, you weren't, for the record, like you weren't the only. I remember I saw an LS tweet when it was 2-0. He's like, I think it was LS. Correct me if I don't want to misquote anybody, but
yeah,
it was somebody who was just like, man, we could have had Shopify in playoffs, man. Like that was the tweet, and yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that like that they were probably the better team, but also I think it's fair to say that Dig underperformed this series, and it's kind of a quiet, disappointing exit for a team that I think did surprise us in certain ways in the regular season. And I actually don't think it's just a matter of, well, this is who they really are. Best of ones made them look better. It's like, no, I think that they are a team that had mental deterioration on their younger players through a series, but they could also play better than they did against TL. And so it's disappointing because it just feels like another Dignitas split where they flame out in the first round. But I think if they can look past that narrative and actually look at some of the things they did right and wrong and actually take all that in stride, I think this team can improve. I hope they continue to. I think they should stay the course. I hope they don't change a bunch of players out, honestly. Like I think that
what I was going to say.
Like, yeah, I especially with the parity in the LCS. I mean, we don't have to get into this episode, but just seeing that Immortals fired their coach yesterday, I don't understand it. But like, this is a league with a lot of parity. If things go a slightly different way, we're talking about Dig as a top 4 upset team. Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah,
so like,
I mean, we had them in
that's
our
kind of how I
top
feel
4 for power rankings, right? So it's not like that's completely out of the question. I just think
they were playing the 4th best League of Legends in the LCS for a good amount of time. It was just factual.
And it's just what's crazy to me is I'm like re-looking at these drafts, and they're horrible. I mean, they did not play to Dignitas.
I forgot about that
at all.
Yeah.
And they just allowed Team Liquid to do what they do best, right? And it was like they were basically anticipating somehow that Rich and Dove were just going to win their lanes, right? And that just didn't happen, right? And not just that, but game 1, they gave both dragons over to Team Liquid. Like, I appreciate their idea with the poke comp. I think it was Azael was casting the game, and he was like, hey, like, they can poke them out before they even get in there. Yeah. And if they do that, then that's going to be able to keep Team Liquid from doing what they want. But it's like, you're not, like, Azael's right, but at the same time, you have the Croc, Xin Zhao, and Arel. They're going to just run at that comp. It does not matter how far back APA and Yan are, because they're going to lock them down and they will get a kill. And eventually, like, I just saw this morning, I think it was in the LPL, Smolder's so strong right now that, especially for them, because I don't think they were on the same patch as us, to where apparently, I think it was T1, had every single objective down, but couldn't win the game because Smolder was just blowing through everything still. And it's just like when a champion's that strong, you just don't give him away, especially in the first game when you're expecting Tomo to kind of, that's his champion. And then you pull out a Kaisa and a Jace. I
Yeah.
appreciate the idea, but a poke comp is also notoriously hard to really play around and to play well, right? Like it's known to be a more your pieces have to play better than they did essentially. Like it's
I
a
mean, it's
harder
also
comp
just
to
not.
execute.
It's just not how Dig plays games either. Like that's the thing that really bothered me the most about this series was the drafts were bad. I actually was more upset with what they gave up than what they picked themselves. Like when I saw them give not just Smolder but also Asol in game one, when we just talked about how like man, this is like exactly what you don't want to give Team Liquid. What are you guys doing, right? But it was also like you said, like a poke comp doesn't play the way that Dig plays, and I think that we're seeing like I don't. Obviously, you want to try new things, but we're seeing how important team identity is in League of Legends. You can say that, and I actually agree with this on paper, individual skill, Rich and Dove are the two best players on Dignitas, individual skill, but they are not who this team plays around. They are not part of the early game unless XU is throwing a curveball up topside, and that's more about XU getting ahead than Rich getting ahead.
Yeah.
And Dove, Dig's best games this season, not necessarily Dove's, but Dig's best games are when Dove was on Corki or Azir or something that he could just scale up and then be a strong team fighting presence, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's good, obviously, to try new things, but they just seem to like throw everything out the window that worked for them. And I know TL and Dig are scrim partners, and I was wondering, maybe like they're like, you know what, we've lost so many scrims to these guys all season. Let's try to throw a
Yeah, let's try
curveball
to
because we
throw
don't
a
feel good about the
curveball.
match. But so like, there's certain things that we may not know, right? Like there's certain context we may not have. But what I saw and what you saw, I think we can agree was not the best. It was a better TL than we expected, but it was not the best of Dignitas against any opponent. That's for
Well,
sure.
and like this shows me. So when I'm going through and looking, and I remember thinking this too. This Dignitas team had lost their identity so much to the point where they played 15 different champions. Not one of them played the same champion in another game. And like that to me screams a lack of understanding of what you are good at, right? And what you need to play around. Their bans were all over the place. I mean, they're out here banning. Like, dude, I'll be honest with you. I think Kalista is the most overrated ban champion in the game right now. I think especially in NA. I know it's really good over in like, the LCK and stuff, but like I just every time somebody bans a Kalista, I sit there and I go, "Why?" Like I just don't feel like people I just don't feel like the LCS plays well enough in an early game to get so much of an advantage with her at Dragon or just in lane in general that she's able to really make it so it's hard for them to come back in the
Right.
mid game, right? Which is the whole point of
Yeah.
that champion. And so it's just like you're giving like Team Liquid are a scaling champion, and the only consistent thing they did was ban Kalista first all 3 games. And you're gonna tell me that Jan was gonna be the one to carry that game, right?
I
Like
will say,
I
I
don't
will
think
say in
so.
their defense, because I agree with you, we don't have a lot of like Callista killers in our region.
No.
Like I wouldn't consider it the type of pick it is overseas, for example, right? I do think it's a very strong pick. We don't have a lot of guys who are Callista specialists, in my
No.
opinion, or at least like at a high level. I will say I think Jan is one of them. I think Jan is one of the best Callista players in the region.
That's
So I
fine, but
will say
he's
that
not gonna be the
that
one
that
that you should be focusing your game plan around, is what I'm trying to say.
fair enough, fair enough.
Like
That's fair.
Tomo, if you give Tomo a scaling pick, regardless of how bad he does in lane, like they were clearly picking for Rich and X and Dove to be able to win in lane, hopefully, right? And then be able to carry them through the game. And if you're going to do that already,
Yeah.
then you shouldn't worry about what Tomo has to go against. You should just be trying to get him the best scaling pick that you can. And it's like,
Mm,
they end up going Zyra, but Zyra not super great right now anyways. I mean, I think the only one that was interesting to me was the Varus Ashe game. I didn't hate that. I just don't love it into Nautilus. And we saw through most of this playoffs, I think Nautilus is potentially a more of a ban, at least to me, than Callista. But again, like, maybe it's just my ignorance on it, or maybe it's just
no, no.
my lack of knowledge. But I mean, it's truly just that, like, I haven't seen Jan, like, sure, he's been good on the Callista, but I don't remember a standout game where I'm like, dude, Jan's Callista was, like, the reason why they won that game. right?
Okay, that's fair.
Like
That's
that's
fair.
what I'm trying to say. Like I'm not sitting here thinking I'm like, yeah, no, it was mostly Smolder that he seemingly got
Yeah,
his
yeah,
hands
yeah,
on,
yeah,
right? Like I just I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
I just think that
No, no, you're right.
Dignitas overthought things, and I think that they should have just played. Like that is always one of the biggest downfalls I think to teams in any sport or any esport is when you overthink what and you try to over strategize for your opponent instead of
Yeah.
just playing to what you are good at. And I think that Dignitas fell victim to this in a
Yeah,
very
they
major
played
way.
themselves a little bit.
Yeah,
And you know what? You're absolutely right. I have to agree with you on the. There's no universe where you're prioritizing a Callista band over a Smolder band if you can't get Smolder away
yeah,
from TL. That's a great point. That's a great point.
yeah.
That's
Thank you.
fair.
I mean, it's just I appreciate it. I don't know
No,
this
you're right.
series. Like I actually got so bored that like halfway through these series, I just
Yeah.
like was doing other stuff because I was like
This
these
one,
games are
yeah.
already over. You know, I mean, it
This
was
is
like
the only one I didn't watch all the way through. I agree. Like I had it on, but like I didn't pay. But after 2-0, I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna keep the
I
game
mean,
3
it's
on while I do
literally at
some
20
dishes or something.
minutes for every single one of these games. It just ended. It just was
Yeah.
over. I mean, I'm serious. It's literally like the goal deficit was just so much. Other than game 3, where Dignitas were just clearly just throwing, I almost felt like they just didn't even care. So
It was boom.
we'll
Yeah.
move on from them. I mean, it's a disappointing series for them. I will we'll give TL credit here in a little bit as well because I think that they actually were way better than I expected this week. And again, that's why I'm wearing my TL jersey. But let's talk real quick about NRG. So, look, I had a feeling that they'd match up well against 100 Thieves, but it still just felt like they couldn't get out of their own way. That's what I felt like during a lot of these games is they would make I think really bad choices like that game 1 FBI gets to Smolder. That was just insta win. It didn't really matter how well Quid played, which he was unbelievable on Talia. That game was super fun to
I
watch
mean, he was
with
on.
him.
He was just. He had I thought he had just
I
an
thought he was
insane series.
yeah, he was so good. And then, they go back to it. I really loved the adaptation that 100 Thieves had here. Again, we'll get back to them here in a second, but it felt like NRG were just, again, playing not a bad comp, honestly. They just played weirdly in game 2, from what I remember. Game 3, right? They were horrible. I thought it was over after game 3. 100 Thieves go up 2-1. I'm like, wow, this is done. Like, it just feels like NRG don't have anything left. They go into game 4 and they honestly, this was a tight one too. I remember that too. Palafox was horrible until the very end where he hits the huge pop blossom to win them the game.
Yeah.
Which was good. And then, obviously game 5 was a bummer. Didn't really feel like they had much of a shot. And I will say that, I tweeted this out and a lot of people were upset when I said this, but I said I think that this is the last time we'll see the core of NRG playing together. And that kills me to say. Maybe they'll, kind of find their way around what just an awful split Palafox, I think, very specifically had. I mean, he was this series was hard to watch for him. I mean, Quid was
Significant gap.
It
Yeah.
was Grand Canyon level, maybe like Earth to the end of the universe level. I mean, I just
Yeah.
Not to be a jerk, but it's just like
No,
I
it's
mean,
what happened.
it's just what happened. I mean, Quid went 31, 7, and 36. Palafox went
Whew.
7, 21, and 44.
Yeah, and that's like in a best of 5. Like you want
Yeah.
your mid laner. If you narrowly lose a best of 5, like your mid laner probably has a better KDA than that, even if you're on the losing side, unless that they got completely gapped, which he did.
DPM is bless you, is a stat that I think is really important. So like FBI actually was really good this series, but they just couldn't seemingly get him strong enough. I mean, well, to be fair, 18 of his 25 kills in the series came in that first game, so maybe he wasn't as good. But like Quid put up 848 damage per minute. Palafox 551. A 300 damage per minute difference. That is a humongous stat, guys. Like your whole unless if he's playing, Nautilus mid or something like that, your entire goal is to do damage. That's every pick he played was to do damage, but it just felt like he didn't really know how to play um, the Nico, even though they won that game. Like it just like I know he does know how to, but it just kind of looked like he didn't really know what he was doing on it. Ari obviously became a really big pick throughout most of the series. He even got the Ari in the first two games. Still didn't really do anything about it. Like he just felt like he was always in a bad position. And River was giving Quid plenty of attention, but Quid like solo killed him, I think, 2 or 3 times this series as well.
It was
So
nasty. Yeah.
I just will say for NRG, I hope that they keep FBI and Huhi. I think that they played really, really well. And I want to give Contracts more credit too, because I think I was pretty harsh on him, like mentally. Like in my mind, I was like, dude, he's terrible. The split, he's reminding me of what I thought of him before. I actually thought he played this series pretty well, all things considered.
He was
I
so clutch.
Yeah, I mean, he's not just his Baron steals and everything else, but it felt like he was going around the map trying to make plays. It was just, I mean, dude, Dokla and Palafox were just awful. I mean, Dokla was a little bit better,
Yeah.
but like Sniper was clearly the better player in this series. Quid was clearly the
Yeah.
better player over Palafox. I mean, it was really hard to watch this team because of how much I love NRG, dude. But it was like I sat there and I was like, if 100 Thieves had more playoff experience, this would have been a 3-0 without a doubt in my mind. I just think that River has got to figure out he cannot throw Barons like that. Like if they want to go where I think that they really think they might be able to go, he can't miss those. Like against Umti in this
Yeah.
next series, and again we'll talk about that I think more on Thursday. If he
Yeah.
misses those will cost them the series. And as great as he has been, I think he has a very good shot of winning the MVP this split. Those are the kinds of things that define your like throw out the MVP. If this guy ends up getting like 5 Barons stolen against him over this playoffs, it's going to be like, oh, as great as River is, if you have to like if you want a chance to win the game regardless of how far ahead 100 Thieves are, you just got to wait till Baron. That's it. And that is
Hmm.
such a that just you get kneecapped as a team. When you throw it that badly. I can tell you as a jungler, like
Hmm.
that is the worst feeling. It's amazing that they kept talking about it. It's amazing his mental. Yeah, that's fair. It's great that his mental's like that, but how's the rest of the team gonna feel when like it's not just the jungler that gets affected by missing the Barons. Like, sure, if he can fight
Hmm.
through it, that's awesome. But like, dude, if I'm Sniper or Quid and like we lose a series because River like literally just can't seemingly win the 50-50s, then you're going to have to take such extra caution around Barons. Like it really throws off a game like a lot more than people think. And that's my biggest criticism for 100 Thieves. Sorry, we'll
Hmm.
bring it back to NRG, but it just was something that I thought was
Yeah.
worth pointing out.
And no, it was. And to actually do, I think to bring it back to NRG, I will say that if I'm 100 Thieves, I'm maybe a little less concerned than you about that because not every other jungler in the league is contracts. Like
Uh,
In the
sure.
Baron pit, he was him. He was him this weekend, dude. It was insane. Like so, like
Well, he
I
has
don't
been
think
for
this
most
is.
of his
Oh man,
career.
but even for him, like this was. I mean, it was almost like I literally when I saw him walking, I'm like, well, that's an energy Baron. They're
Yeah.
down like 7K gold. I'm like, no, he'll get it. Like it. It's less about. I agree with you. Like River just fights better, but like Contracts was on one. Like I think that. I mean, he's the Prince of Thieves in the LCS right now, and I think that like
I love that.
you just don't flip against him. Like you have 100 Thieves, they have the one best thief. Like he thieves from the thieves. But
I love that.
and I think NRG. I've actually thought about this a lot because this is the series that I called down to the game, and I think I figured out what NRG's problems are. In terms of, I mean, yes, Palafox and Dokla have to play better. I'm going to give a little bit of a pass. I know that Dokla was only a week out from being super violently ill. I'm sure he's not fully 100% yet, but that also doesn't account for the fact that he didn't play. This is not Dokla from last year. This is not Palafox from last year, and that's an issue.
Well, it was the entire
I
split.
also
They weren't
I
good.
also wonder. We were talking. I think. Yeah, exactly. I also wonder. I feel like maybe. I think we all saw this team, and like, well, Huhi for Ignar is like kind of a negligent switch, or not negligent. Sorry. What's the word I'm looking for?
I know what you're trying to
It's a
say.
negligible difference. There's not
Yeah.
like a lot of different. And in a sense, that's true. because it's like, oh, then Huhi and FBI have familiarity. But if you look, I went and looked back at some of NRG's playoff run from last year, and while there was certain games where like FBI and Ignore were popping off in the lane, a lot of like what NRG last year did play around their solo lanes more, and those solo lanes aren't as strong. Um, and but two, we also know that Huhi is a great roamer and can do stuff with his mid and jungle really well. We saw him do it on Golden Guardians. Why isn't it happening here? I think that it could be it's either the solo lanes aren't enough of a strong point consistently to play through in that way. Because on Golden Guardians, it was like Huhi would just like leave sticks. Like he's like, all right, I'm gonna go to the store for some cigarettes. I'll see you at your high school graduation. Like once you've done all the work yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so we know he can
Yeah,
roam and
that's
play it
true.
with that. So either he feels like, or either Palafox isn't the win condition he was last year, or FBI and Huhi, while Huhi is great roamer, they're going to play more for their lane, especially when their solo lanes are failing, because that's how they know how to play for each other. So I feel like we had
Yeah.
like, on one hand, we had FBI and Huhi doing their 3.0. They were together on Golden Guardians. They're together on 100 Thieves. They're back together again. Let's play the same way, right? And then we had NRG 3.0. We had the CLG roster, then we got FBI and Ignar, and then now we have this. That whole time, they were a solo lane focused team, and the top side core was the same. So I think we have three guys who've played together for a very long time, and on the bottom side of the map, the only guys who've played together longer than those three guys in the LCS in every single roster. Like you could point out certain like player duos, but like if we're talking consecutive
No, they
time.
are. Yeah.
So I think we have two like these two halves of this team that never actually like look solo and like individual form aside. These two halves of this team never fully connected because I think they were both seeing very different versions of this team coming together without realizing it. And I think that's more likely for there to be. That's why I think you're right about there being more of a change. I think it has less to do with like, oh, one guy underperformed massively, needs to be kicked. It's like just maybe, this isn't the team that we thought they were like compositionally. Maybe this isn't going to work the same way because FBI and Ignar roams away. FBI and Huhi play through lane. And unless
Yeah.
NRG wants to be a bot lane focused team, that's not going to work. So,
Well,
but
and
then if
maybe
you
they
want to say,
should
well,
be. I mean,
maybe
FBI
they should be
is
right because
the
maybe
best
maybe our
bot lane.
solo maybe their solo lanes are no longer reliable. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know who they keep. I don't know what the issue is, but I think that we're seeing that these two groups, this topside trio and our longtime like bot lane duo, like that we've seen play together for so long, didn't come together as a unit of five. And more than ever, we're seeing how like I think we're learning that like individual like synergy with one player like really is like it's about how the complexion of five comes together more than ever. It's been trending like that for a while, but even more than
Yeah.
ever, I think it's at least in the LCS, two guys who know each other really well have not been carrying teams the way that we've seen maybe that work in the past. We've always seen FBI and Huhi do that in the past, like so. Yeah, I'm not sure. It was disappointing. Obviously, I thought they were going to put it together, but yeah, I think that the solo lanes were lacking compared to last year, but I don't think that's necessarily the only issue. So like I think if NRG wants to really change it up, honestly, I think it's not. You think you change two players, not because two players were bad. I think that you get rid of your solo laners or you get rid of your bot lane.
Well, and I mean,
Um,
it'll be interesting to see because I don't really know what's available necessarily in the mid lane right now for them, right? Like that's I think one of the bigger uh, questions. I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting because I think the licorice sweepstakes are coming up here in the next like 3 weeks, basically. There will be a team that will go get him. Uh, whether or not it will work, we'll have to see. But I do think you're right. I just assumed that they were going to be great. The five of them. Like I just figured I was like,
I
dude, with
mean,
who he
you
on
and
this
everybody,
team,
dude.
like yeah, and it's just weird that they didn't seem to gel. And to me, like I went back and looked. I just think, yeah, it just didn't seem like they were ever on the same page. And I think that they needed to identify that. Yeah, I do think that's on Think Card too. And I wonder how much losing those positional coaches actually did hurt them, right? To be able to have those, like, I'm serious. Like, you have that
No, I,
constant
I
level
was
of
a big
support.
champion of yeah.
I mean, it's
I was a
expensive. I don't blame NRG for getting rid of them. Like, as much as everybody wants to be like, they should have kept them, they should have kept them. Like, dude, when you have like 10 coaches and every other team has two, like, that's not inexpensive. And like winning a championship makes it probably worth it. but ultimately, we don't know. Obviously, like, and we'll talk about this, I think, during the offseason, the announcement this week that the VCT style of payment format and stuff, financial format, I should call it, coming to the LCS next year, I think is um, very interesting and a deeper topic that Nick and I will have to get into. We got a lot actually to go over, I think, this offseason, which will be nice, or this break in
Hmm.
between MSI and
Oh, definitely,
the LCS
definitely.
split. But it's disappointing to see NRG like this. I personally, like, while I did tweet that out, I want to see them keep everybody together and just spend time like this break just figuring out what their style is, because I think the five of them together can be a beautiful marriage to where it's like, yeah, maybe they are different religions, but they can find a way to uh you know accept their differences and just move past it, right? Um, to the point of where it's just, hey, we're both religious, cool, that's it, right? This is no comment on actual religion. It's just a stupid joke of marriage,
N-
but I do
So
think it
I want to
is
continue your I want to
fair.
continue your metaphor though a little
Okay.
bit because I mean, yes, you can agree to you can have different you can agree to disagree, but when your organization is greater than the sum of its parts, the thing that was great about NRG last year was we all agreed that this team was greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be not a matter of, oh, we need to fix it. It's like, what if the team last year, every player clicked with the natural strengths. Even if this team can talk about the problems, we don't know if they can fix it. I have to say it. We don't know if Palafox and Dokla last summer were the real guy or if this is the real guy. Because if you actually want to play the majority sweepstakes and look at the overall of their careers, last year's the outlier, and I don't want that to be the case. But
Yeah.
I think that I want
Well, it was like a year and
I
a
want them to
half, to be
work.
to be fair to them. That NRG core has been together for 2 years now, right? And it was the last year and a
Yeah,
half
and they
where
were
they
only ever top three in the summer that they won.
true, but they
They were
were scaling. You could see them getting better each
okay.
split. I will give them
I
that.
agree with I agree with that, and I guess I'm just wondering like, is this the ceiling for these players individually? And we saw the
Oh, well,
permutation
yeah.
of 2023 summer where all of their weaknesses and strengths were properly covered by each other because that's just how that team came together.
Yeah.
And that's where we saw like this energy might just be the sum of its parts, and that's not a champion winning team.
Yeah. That's a
So
bummer.
we're gonna have to see. It sucks too because I do like that team when they're firing on all cylinders. All those players I think individually are good are good and can be good. Like I'm not saying I've given up on Doakland, Palafox, and there's a lot like you said. I think losing the coaching staff was huge. I loved how many coaches NRG had. I thought it was going to become the standard, but LOL the economy, obviously not. Uh, but I mean, the jokes of like 47 coaches. I'm like, yeah, and they're beating you. They're out prepping and beating your better teams on paper
Well, and
because they
that's how
have
League of
more,
Legends has
you know?
needed to be for a long time. I never understood that. I
Yeah.
mean, when when TGH when we had a team, like, the eventual goal was going to be that we had positional coaches at everything, because that's what you have in traditional sports. And it's like, and there's a reason why. It's because they can work on the individual matchups. They can work on the individual skills that you need to have, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you can, and it's easier for, like, when Demonte was there, right? It's easier for him to work with Palafox on what every matchup looks like, because that's his only job. It's not the overall macro. It's not draft, right? It's not, three different players. It's, all right, Demonte, your job is to make sure that Palafox knows everything he needs to know about the Ari Talia matchup, right? You need to tell him what's the optimal builds, when to push, when to, maybe seed some stuff, when to go roam, like, all the stuff that you may not be able to do in a micro sense anymore. You need to be able to teach him, how to do, or just to make sure that, all right, hey, like, there's a new build out for Ari this week. You need to know these kinds of things for it, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
then you take that off of Palafox's plate, and he's just able to go and play the game, right? He's able to learn it through playing it, instead of learning it to learn it and then learning it through playing it, right? Like, there is that step, and you're taking out that extra step with that positional coach. And so I think it eventually, hopefully, once League of Legends gets more money into it again, once things start to kind of, I think, pick back up, because I think that that hopefully that will happen. Um, God forbid Riot Games ever actually do any sort of marketing, like true marketing, but whatever. Um, it's incredible to me this company has just relied on word of mouth for literally over a decade at this point, essentially. Um, but regardless, like I think that definitely I think was a major effect on this team, and so we'll have to see if that plays into what happens this coming split. I will say, um, Mr. Andy Miller is not known for being. Uh, he's not impatient, but at the same time, he's not going to be somebody who I can see just being like, all right, this is what it is. We'll move on to next split.
Yeah.
There will be a change, whether it's going to
Yeah.
be the coaching staff or a player. If there's not a change, then you can quote me on it, and I'll be wrong.
I'll be very surprised.
But,
I'll be very surprised if there's not a change.
because this team was expected. I think top 3 was the minimum expectation for them. I think that they were prepping to go to MSI before the season started. But we'll move on.
Sure. Yeah.
I think we've got limited time here, so I want to blow through a couple of the easier things to talk about. I think Cloud9 were unbelievable. They looked so damn strong. I mean, they dismantled 100 Thieves in that series. Maybe you disagree, but
no. That's. I mean, I think that there's going to be a natural overreaction. Like, well, River was super sick, and I think that did play a part.
Yeah.
But this, I can't in good faith say that because I was like, oh, C9 3-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that a healthy River makes this a 3-2. I think maybe they win a game, but what we saw was Cloud9 be the Cloud9 that we want. This is the first time that we've seen what this Cloud9 team actually could do when they play that we want to see them play on paper. These were the 3 best games they've played all year.
Without a doubt.
It was disgusting. Like if
crazy to me is it's not just JoJo, right? Like, dude, it was
no, it was everybody.
Berserker showed up finally.
He was him once again.
He like literally reminded us of why he should be in MVP conversations all the time. I mean, it was almost like for some reason he remembered how to be aggressive. Like that's what I saw this entire time. Is it was just like
he just looks like a different guy, man. I don't know. Yeah, it was every single aspect of his gameplay was better. Also, I have to say because I've been very critical of him this split, I thought Fudge had a great series too. Fudge absolutely made Sniper look like he stripped Sniper of any confidence experience. I mean, not like meant like I don't think Sniper's boomed. I think in the way that he played, I was like, damn, this is the most I've seen Sniper get destroyed by anybody in the LCS this split. We saw C9 be the C9 that we thought C9 was going to be, and it was really nice because holy crap, this team can be so good. If they can maintain this level, I mean, again, I don't want to get too far into the future, but this is the C9 that we thought we were going to see, and it is terrifying when you see it put together. Finally. Also, the drafts were so much better. I don't know what conversations went on.
I think it was the best of series. I think that they just know how to play.
But even the game one draft was I felt really risky. I didn't like it. I even I texted you about this. I was like, well, they're gonna have to show up really well and play their early games a lot cleaner, and then they did. And that comp was like 100 Thieves had no idea what to do. Like so, C9 just. I mean, there's not a ton. I mean, there's a lot to cover, but ultimately, it's like C9 kind of played better. And that was and River was sick, and so it was like that's why it was so one-sided. But I don't think there was there's no universe where 100 Thieves at their best could have beaten that team that day.
No,
there's nobody. It was just
in the LCS
insane
that could have beat that team in that day. There's nobody.
No, it was absolutely insane. Just really really dominant. And we'll see. Like maybe a healthier River makes that different. Especially because it's when Blabber just can go unopposed and get momentum. This team just really rolls forward. But like you said, it was a lot of the issues that we saw that we talked about. I mean, Berserker individually was way better. He and Vulcan, I thought, were way more on the same page. That Vulcan individually was a lot better. Fudge was individually a lot better. JoJo and Blabber continue to be excellent. So, I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, and it's really nice to see. And I think, I mean, if they can maintain, if that C9 shows up at that level, I mean, it's done and dusted, man. That is the team when everyone was like super team, best possible team in the LCS. This is what people imagined. We finally saw it, and it is scary, man. They were Whew, they were dominant.
It's terrifying. I mean, it's like it was like a rolling boulder that truly gathers no moss. I mean, sorry to do a blitzcrank there, but for real though, you couldn't stop them. The momentum was just so strong. They were an unstoppable force. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, Fudge went. If you would have told me that Fudge, I didn't even know this, would have the most kills in the series,
yeah, he played really well.
17, 1, and 12. He died one time. The team over a 3-game span died an average of like 5.5 times a game. That's it.
And that's
Like,
because they were brawling like crazy. Like they were fighting and giving stuff up. It was like those. Not that those were all calculated deaths, but it's like they were playing aggressively to like we don't care if we take some lumps back
but they
because we're
didn't.
we're
Like, but that's what's
you know
incredible is they didn't die though. Like, because like compared to, again, 100 Thieves, obviously they're gonna die more they lost. But again, like, uh, Ayla was the only one on their entire team, that didn't die at least 10 times.
oh shit.
Like, it's
Yeah.
like, again, I like to use KDA in a way of like breaking down more of the factors of the rest of the game, right? Like, our boy Sniper got 1 kill the entire series. That's it. Like,
Yeah, he had a rough one.
yeah, and it's like, I even really liked their game 3 draft, honestly. It was kind of a fuck it draft, right? Like, we're just gonna throw it out there and hope that Quid can
I liked
carry,
it too.
right?
Yeah.
I think it was a smart idea. It was good for me as well to see C9 be able to kind of still play their game within that. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, look, C9 again. We don't need to waste too much time on them. They looked like them. I loved it. Let's move
Yeah.
on. FlyQuest looked the opposite of them. They almost lost their series to Team Liquid, which was very concerning to me, if I'm being completely honest with you. Um, I think Bwipo and Inspired had really rough series. I think truly Jensen and Busio might have saved it for them, from what I can remember of this series. This was
Jensen
the first
was
series, but
super good.
Jensen was insane. Outside of, I think, that Annie game, he was like pretty rough. But every other game, I felt like
But
he.
you're playing Annie. You're supposed to just run
Oh wait,
in
was
and,
it not
and
Annie?
drop a
Wait,
bear
did
and
they do
die.
Annie
No,
in
it,
game?
it was
When did
no, it
they?
was Annie in game 5.
Okay,
It was
yeah,
Annie game 5.
yeah. He didn't. I don't think he played that well. They were giving a lot of credit to Masu. This is not anything against Masu, but I actually think Busio played really, really well. I think he gave Masu a lot of space to work. To give Masu credit, he played probably the only good Kalista game of the entire series, or of the entire playoffs so far.
He had a
He had a
great
really
series,
good
but I do
game,
agree with you
but
that
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Sorry.
no,
Go
it's
ahead.
okay. No, it's okay. No, it's hey, this is our back and forth. You can cut me off if you need
Yeah.
to. If you gotta get
Well, no, I was just saying
into
I agree with you that a lot of Masu's success, if you look, it was what Jensen and Busio were doing in team fights to make space for him, and
yeah,
and the rest of his team. I mean, not that I also thought Masu had a great series. I thought Masu played very well. It was honestly the bot lane for FlyQuest stepped up. It was really nice
they needed
because
to.
because
Yeah.
TL really stepped up,
Well,
and
yeah, that's what I
and
was gonna
and
say.
TL's bot lane went crazy on them, but Masu and Busio were able to they died a lot in the 2v2, but they were able to be valuable in team fights and still provide to their team. That's hard to do as a rookie when you're facing down the barrel of Jan at his best with Core JJ in his back pocket. If you, I don't know if you saw it, when C9 beat 100 Thieves, Vulcan said going into playoffs, I think Jan and Core are the best bot lane in LCS, and they were sick nasty this weekend. Like
Yeah.
as a duo, they were scary. So big props to to the FlyQuest bot lane for sticking, standing up to that and being able to throw some counter punches there. But Team Liquid definitely played better than I thought they were going to. I do think FlyQuest played a little worse, but actually not too much. I think TL really came up and matched. I do think Bwipo and Inspired individually had a little they were a little iffy compared to
Until game
regular
5,
season. But
Inspired was insane
yeah,
on that Viego. That Viego was like
actually,
a
you know what?
madman.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna run that back. I think Bwipo had a shaky series. I actually think Inspired was pretty crazy good for at least
I
4 or
actually
5
don't.
games, and then
I was gonna say only
and
like
then
two
and
games
then
for me for Inspired. I thought that
I think that
games.
he was quiet, but I think he was actually, if you look at his early game choices, for how good Umti was in this series, he actually responded pretty accordingly, and there were a lot of things out of his control.
That's fair.
Um, he wasn't MVP inspired, but I think that was also. Like, I think it was like, oh man, he's not the guy making the mistakes in their losses, and then he was taking over. Especially the game 5 Viego is. You just love to see a guy. Viego's not a meta jungler. I mean, Viego can play fine right now, but like he's
Played
not a
decent.
top tier jungler. But it's inspired Viego, and I love when you see a guy. It's like, well, and if he has that champion, it could be bad for them. And it's like he is that dude on Viego, and it was awesome to see it happen in action. I think that's why they were okay with the Annie. Jensen's not an Annie player. Jensen's Annie wasn't even that good. He's not. Stop. I hate watching Jensen play utility mages. It's the
I was
worst.
gonna say, I was
But
like, it was so fun to
but
watch.
if your job is to run in, throw a napalm teddy bear at the team, and let some guy with a sword do the rest of the job. Good job, little girl. Your death was not in vain. This guy will take care of the rest. Like, like it's fun. And it worked.
Jensen was like
It was
Leanna
fine.
Mormont, dude. Running in there to the big old giant, just getting crushed. But like,
That's your job as Annie, to be fair. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Inspired was a bit more quiet. I still think he was good. I think Bwipo flipped a little too much. But also I think that Impact was just absolutely absurd
he was
this
playing
weekend.
well.
I,
Yeah,
Impact and Core. I think we were talking about like you're like, are Impact and Core still those world champion dudes? So the answer is fucking yes. Those guys both had insane weekends in my opinion.
I gotta give it to I gotta give it to Core, man. I think especially Core just
Yeah,
played.
Core was
It's like this is
insanely
why
good.
these are examples of why we need best of series. I'm gonna give us the
Yeah,
1 minute on it, but this is why. Like these guys, like you get a better understanding of who these teams are, right? Like you can tell based off of more than just a 1 game sample, right? Um, and I just think that like this series, I think that this series starting off playoffs was the perfect prime example for why all these players need to just be like, this is the series, Mark Z, why we need to go back to best ofs. You need to convince the higher ups at Riot Games that this is why. Because, I mean, I thought FlyQuest, I almost picked them 3-0. That's how down I was on Team Liquid. But this is a better team in best of series. And I think that I think it's time for us to talk about Team Liquid for a little bit. And I guess we'll end with 100
yeah,
Thieves. Um, you know, they all played really well. They took the pressure off of APA and Yan and allowed them to play their games. And like I was really proud of APA for the prime reason that this guy played like 6 different champions during playoffs so far, or maybe it's like 5, something like that. He's not just playing Ziggs or just playing Aurelion Sol, right? He is playing meta junglers. He's playing the Nikos. He's playing the Talias. He's playing the Aries, right? And he just looked. Was he great in these series? No, but like I was thinking this the entire weekend, especially watching Team Liquid. When are we gonna stop criticizing younger players for only being really good at a couple champions? And the reason that I say that is for the longest time, if you go back and look right at the Jensens, the Bjergsens, even the double lifts, right? Like when you're getting your start, it takes a long like you may know how to play a lot of champions at a challenger level, but to be able to play them and bring them out at a pro level is a very different thing. And I watching these TL series, I watched Yan and APA I think grow up a little bit more. I know they had other experiences before this, obviously, but like these series, I was just impressed because I'm like, can we just stop criticizing these guys for only knowing a few champions or only being really good on a few champions on a certain patch? That's how it always goes. It takes a long time to build a champion pool like this, and they both brought it, right? Like, I was being critical of the Dignitas banning of Jan's Callista. I forgot that he played it 3 times in this series, so makes more sense. But they did. They banned it out against him, and he still came out and won, right? And for APA, same sort of thing, right? Ziggs one trick, blah blah blah. Like this kid still came out and made plays. Is his scoreline always going to look the best? No. Is he going to make mistakes? Sure. But that's because he's a young player and he's learning these things. And it was just so nice to see in all 8 of Team Liquid's games, which by the way, as a reminder, that would be 2/3 essentially of the season that they played in 2 days. But
Yep.
aside from that, um, it was just nice to see Core, Umpty, and Impact allow like they finally took the pressure off the young guys and allowed for them to not be the sole focus so that they could play well, so that they could play in a way that was better. They still made mistakes. But I just felt like it was a soapbox time right now to explain that I'm just sick of it. I'm so sick of these young players, all of them, Masu, Busio. If they're not just amazing in their first split, oh, we need to write them off. Like that's the reason why there's so much change in the LCS. These coaches and everything, they listen to the fans. Oh, we didn't perform. Looks like we need to make a change. Like for anybody who's out there, just stop. Just stop. Let these players develop. They're young. They need time. Blabber wasn't amazing. Blabber was great, obviously, from the start, but like people I think forget, he split time his first split. They took the pressure off of him. They gradually got him into the starting role. There needs to be new discussions about it, and this Team Liquid team I think is the prime example. And I swear if they freaking go out there and change APA or Yan for next split, regardless of what happens against 100 Thieves this weekend, I am going to go on an absolute rampage. I'm tired of it. I know these teams feel the need to win, but at the same time, if you don't let your young guys develop, unless if you see that there's no way that they are going to reach a potential level that is going to be top tier, you need to give them a chance. And I think that, that we're seeing it. They're getting better with every split, and I think this series was really nice to see them grow up in that way. So, sorry. I'm done. But
No, you're fine. I don't disagree. I do think I agree with your points. I do think there's like some other asterisks specifically around APA. Being that it's not just that it's not that he's getting a couple of champions. Here's the problem with APA right now. My biggest problem with APA is that he's playing a lot of champions and he's not very good on any of them, including Ziggs. His Ziggs has not been that sharp.
I know.
And I think that it lends itself, and I know we have to talk about 100 Thieves in a second here, so I don't want to belabor this point, but there's been so much talk around like, oh, APA is talking trash. He shouldn't be talking trash because he's, not playing well, or like, it's so cringe for him to talk trash when he's losing. It's like, you guys are the same people who are like, this league is boring, or people only talk shit when they win. You can't have it both ways. Yep. 1, 2, this idea of like, oh, he shouldn't be talking smack if he's bad. It's like, he is getting in the heads of his opponents. Like if y'all don't watch y'all don't watch basketball, go look up a guy named Draymond Green, and that's where APA is right now. And you can say what you want about that. That is his best comparison right now.
That's fair.
For better or for worse, he is, because Jen's team says like it's hard to focus when a player who's bad is typing. It's like, oh, so you mean that you, the better player, got unseated by all chat? You got unnerved by all chat? You've been playing this game for 10 years. That's an embarrassing thing to admit, in my opinion. And if APA is so bad, why are people? And I agree. I think he's played pretty poorly, even on his signature picks. I don't think he's been very good. So the greatest asset he has for Team Liquid right now is pissing off the other team. That being said, he didn't type a single thing in all chat in the second series, which leads me to believe that maybe internally they think like, hey, this is fighting in people's heads that this is making you play worse, that's when it becomes a problem. But like this idea of like, oh, he hasn't earned the right. Like, shut the hell up. Just shut up. Like, because it's like, you're like, oh, well, he shouldn't do that. Because then it's like, he's not good. I'm like, okay, so then he talks smack and gets clapped. He fucked around and found out. That's how all of life works.
Yep.
So like, yeah, you're right. And it's like, it's weird that they're like, oh, he shouldn't do it. It's like, oh, really? Because I think it worked out perfectly fine for the other team. He talked smack and got his ass kicked by Jensen. So what you wanted to happen already happened.
And then he
right? So
Dignitas series and was awesome. He was great in that Dignitas
series. He was the mid laner on the winning team.
No,
I don't think he was fantastic.
Dude, he was really solid in that series.
Okay. All right. Well, my point is that
I think you're falling into that same trap. I mean, even if you want to just look at it statistically, this kid was pumping out 900 damage per minute. The next best person on his team was Yan at 700, dude. We didn't have a single person.
Champions?
It doesn't.
On what champions?
It doesn't matter.
It super matters.
Asol,
if you're playing
Ari, and Ziggs. 3
Oh, cool.
completely
Poke
different
and Siege
champions.
champions who do a ton of damage. Like,
Listen,
look, I am an APA fan for the record. I think that he is. I'm here for it.
I just
I
think the
actually I wish that
criticism
he
is
kept.
too harsh. That's all I'm
I
saying.
think that that's fair. What I'm saying is that I think the criticism for APA has shifted away from champion pool, which it has been for most of the season, and has now shifted to you're just straight up bad and you are typing a lot, which I don't agree with. But what I do agree with is that if the typing is getting in the way of him playing well, which he is not doing for the most part,
Yeah, but maybe
even
that's the
on
way
his
he like
signature
psychs
picks, I'm here.
himself up.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if it's a benefit, that's what I thought. I'm like, well, it's a benefit if it's making teams upset. You know, that's it's getting in their head. I mean, there were games that Team Liquid won. Some of the games Team Liquid won against FlyQuest because FlyQuest was like had like 3 guys diving on APA while their side lanes were getting destroyed. It's like, congrats, you got the guy who's annoying, but you're not winning the game. I actually thought it was brilliant by APA. That's why I was surprised that he kind of had a muzzle put on him in against Dig. He all he typed was GLHF the whole game. And
But
so
like that's what I'm seeing. I'm sorry. I just want to say though, this is what I'm seeing though, and I know he needs to play his side lanes better. I think that's probably honestly one of the weakest parts of his game. But like the thing that I've struggled with TL all year up until these 2 series was when there are 3 people hitting APA in the mid lane, right? Because like that's what it felt like. It was like every time, like sure, his positioning wasn't great, but it was like he was dying to multiple people ganking him. Should he have been more aware? Whatever. Okay, sure. But like nobody else was getting anything done. Like when there are 3 guys attacking one in a game of League of Legends, that means that it's a 4v2 across the rest of the map and nothing else was getting done. And like that's where I'm struggling with, like, I know I don't have the same like I think vision of the game as you do in terms of like I think I see the game a little bit differently than you do at times. And I think that that's good. I think that's why we have like such good discourse. But it's like I've watched almost every single APA game since he has come up.
mm-hmm.
And does he make technical blunders? Sure. Does he make mistakes? Absolutely. But so do a lot of other, like,
yeah,
the most other players do, right? And it's like he is being hyper focused because he's a new young American mid laner, right? And everybody wants to see him be great, but it takes time to be great. And people forget that he basically skipped challengers to go to the LCS. Like, there's just so much of a difference. Like, I just think that the hyper criticism of him, regardless of what it is shifted to, I think is
okay.
I just think it's unfair. I
Okay.
really do. And
So
it's
you're
because
saying
he's on
regardless of
Team
the
Liquid.
validity of the complaints or what the complaints are about, you're saying
But
that
like you could say that
there's
for
more of a
so
lens on
many.
him.
But
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
could say that about so many players. I mean, hell, look at Dove, Castle, any player that's from the East, and the criticisms nowadays because they were way too hypercritical of them when players were first coming over has almost died down to a point where it's like, oh, like they can make mistakes, who cares? Right? Like he's on Team Liquid, so there is an expectation with that, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, hell, even Insanity. I mean, I love Insanity. I mean, you know how much of a big fan I am of Insanity. That dude makes mistakes all the time, but the expectations for him are not the same. Right? And
Yeah.
like,
Well, I mean, yeah, that's
and
fair.
it's just, and it's not just that, but it's like, again, I have been very critical of the fact that like TL have a very specific style that they play. And I don't know that APA fits that style. I would love to see him on a different team. I hope he stays on Team Liquid, obviously, but like I feel like there's some other teams that he could go to that I think his style would fit better with those teams. So it's just like, to me, like, I'm not saying that the criticisms aren't valid. I'm not claiming that like APA is great or that he is this like untouchable type player, right? But there comes a point where like we are criticizing a young man who is trying to find his way, and if we continue to hyper criticize these players before they've even had a full freaking year in the league, then we're going to run out of players because their confidence is going to be shot. And so like that's my whole point. Like sure, there are things that he needs to get better at, but outside of maybe JoJo, even, who we were kind of critical of him, and he figured it out very quickly because well, APA is never going to be a JoJo. Let's just be honest. Like their ceilings are
JoJo's
very
JoJo's
different.
first two splits were also more up and down than people like to remember.
Yeah. All right, so my impassioned speech probably went a little too long, so unfortunately Nick did have to head out. I knew we had a time limit, but we rarely actually hit the time limit that we put on there. So that one's on me. I just get impassionate about younger players. I like to see them get their opportunities, but without a ton of criticism, because I think that is a big problem in the league. But we are gonna pop off here for the end of the show. We didn't get to 100 Thieves, but I think we're gonna get to them on the next one, so don't worry about that. Very happy that Nick and I got to have, I think, such a deep conversation this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it for playoffs as well. You can still see his beautiful pictures down there. But it was it was good. I'm glad, I feel like a lot of times he and I do agree on a lot of things and see things the same way. And this was, I think, the first time we really had like a true disagreement on things. Generally he's right, to be honest with you. Nick's one of the brightest minds, obviously, in League of Legends. I can say that now because he's not on here to get mad at me for saying stuff like that, but and he's way too humble. But we do appreciate you that you guys are watching this. Please let us know in the comment section below if you haven't subscribed already. Please make sure to do that. You're gonna get these kinds of deeper discussions where I think sometimes I'm a little bit too much of a fanboy, but I'm not gonna apologize for that. I have a fun time being that way, but we do appreciate all you guys for watching, and make sure to catch the next episode, like I said, where we're going to break down the Cloud9 FlyQuest series and the Team Liquid 100 Thieves series, where we'll get, sorry 100 Thieves fans, you guys have had your opportunities, we've talked about them a lot, but we'll do a much deeper dive into those series on the episode coming out on Thursday or Friday. I don't know which one yet. We'll have to see. It depends on when we get to record, but with that, we'll catch you guys on the next one.